Hello, geometry students, and welcome to a lesson on points, lines, and planes. This is an introductory lesson. It's lesson 2-2A. It goes along with homework 2-2A. So this is for homework 2-2A, for assignment 2-2A, which is named that way in Canvas. You should have printed this page of notes, which you can find in the summary for week 2. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, we've already talked about these things, some of these things, but this is sort of what it looks like when you have to answer questions about them. So what is a point? A point is a location, and that is if we're talking in synthetic geometry, or an ordered pair, which is a location on the xy plane or the Cartesian plane. Okay, so that's the two ways that we're going to think of a point. Okay, either way, it has no size, it has no shape. It's too small for that. Too small for having any kind of shape. We use a capital letter, uppercase letter, to name a point. For example, what you're looking at over here is point A. I would not use a lowercase for that. It would mean something else, as you'll see in a minute. Okay, a line made up of points. Any 2 points, you can name a line with any 2 points. Really, there's infinitely many points on a line, but any 2 points gives you enough information to name the line. So right here, well, let's talk about naming in a second. So a line has no thickness and no width. Whoops, no thickness, no width. That's a mess. And as we said here, what this is really saying here is that we name a line with any 2 points on the line, or we can use a lowercase script letter. So here's a line to your left, and there's 2 ways that we can name this line. We could name this line X, Y, and truth is it doesn't matter which order the points go in. It could be any 2 points in any order. Or we can name this just line N. And if you just say N, I know you're talking about a line. Okay, so just a little review of what collinear and non-collinear points are. So if we had, let's say, another point here, let's call that P, and I had another point, let's say over here, let's call that Z, then I could say that X, P, and Y, these are all uppercase, so don't make them look small. Those points are collinear because they're on the same line. They're on line N or line XY, whichever you named it. And we could also say that X, Y, and Z are non-collinear. Non-collinear. Okay, on to planes. Okay, a plane is a flat surface. Flat surface. And it's also made up of points, and you could say it's made up of lines too. Any 3 points allow you to name a line. This is, again, we're talking about a naming thing here. We're not really saying that 3 points makes up a plane because you need infinitely many points to make the plane. So you might want to write a note that right there that there's really infinitely many points on every plane. Okay, it extends indefinitely in all directions. So even though you're only looking at what looks like a parallelogram over here, we're assuming that this goes on forever in all directions. A line goes on forever, a plane goes on forever, a point doesn't go anywhere. Okay, so a couple ways you could name a plane. Now this is a cursive P right here. It's cursive, so you don't want to make it look like an uppercase P. Don't want to make it look like if you had, say, back up to points. You know, you have a P there. You don't want to make it look like that. You have to make it look different. So some of you, I know, the reason I'm saying all this, I know some of you are not that comfortable with cursive. So, you know, you just have to make it fancy. Now you can avoid that. I'll show you how. So you can call this, and I'm going to make it kind of fancy. I don't know. It's hard to make a fancy P, but that's about it. That's one way to name a plane. And another way to name it is plane any 3 points as long as they're not collinear, and here they're non-collinear points. So let me just put one in between here so I can show you what not to do. Let's call this point M. All right, so you can name the plane with any 3 non-collinear points like J, K, and L. All uppercase. Remember, those are uppercase letters, but not, see, non-collinear, right? So not plane JML, because at least they look like they're collinear. So I'm going to say, not to do that. Don't do this. Okay, so let's start looking at, so before we do examples, a little bit of terminology, intersection. So the intersection, 2 lines, as you can see, if 2 lines do intersect, they intersect at a single point. So the intersection of 2 lines is a point. Now, if you think about it with 2 planes, it's a little bit, here's the line, here's the intersection of the line. With 2 planes, they intersect right there. Now remember, the planes go on forever, but here's the problem. You can't draw it, because if you draw the plane going on forever, you won't see the end. You won't see anything to show you that it's a plane. So we're really limited in how we can represent a plane with a drawing. But a line has a little advantage that we can draw arrows and show that it goes on forever. And so you have to imagine that plane, this is an L. This is a cursive L up here. This is a cursive L. So that's what that is. And this is a cursive M. I think you can tell that one just because it looks a lot like a normal M. But it's got that fancy curvy thing. So as long as you make an attempt to do that, I'll know that it's cursive. Okay, and 2 planes intersect at a line. Oops. I'm having trouble getting to my... Whatever, we'll just do that. Okay. All right, so let's look at a couple of diagrams that have combinations of figures. This first diagram has just a combination of lines, then you've got one with some planes and lines, and then you've got one with several planes, and you've got one with a couple planes and a couple lines. Okay, so let's first just look at when we have 3 lines interacting together here. So 4 collinear points. Now some of these have more than one right answer, so when that happens, I'm going to put a little asterisk, and that means there's more than one answer. And that's just the nature of the beginning of geometry. That won't always be the case, but it's the case right now. Now, 4 collinear points, there's only one line that has 4 points that we can name here, and that's the one that goes this way. So these points right here, these are our 4 collinear points. 1, 2, 3, 4. And those are the only 4 that we can really see on here. So H, N, K, and I. All uppercase, no little i's with a dot on here. We don't want to see that. A line that contains point M. So this is the line that contains point M right here. I'm going to highlight it in green. Okay, so this is the only one. Now, the thing about this line is you got a couple different ways you could name it. You could name it with a lowercase p, or you could name it with a, this is why there's multiple, and I'm just going to do this all in black. I think it's a little bit easier. So let's just call this lowercase p, or you could call it the line with 2 uppercase letters with any 2 that you want. So you could call it MN with a line over it, and then there's more choices. So this one definitely has more than one answer. You can call it MN, NM, OM, any 2 points that are on that line. Okay, C, a line that contains points A and K, H and K. Now there's only one line that contains those, and it is this line right here. This is the only line that contains H and K. So there's several ways to name that line. You could name it HK. That would be one way. But because there's several ways to name it, that one also gets an asterisk. Okay, another name for line Q. So line Q is this one down here, this one here. So that Q represents the line, so one way would just be Q, or line Q. And by the way, you don't really need to put the word line in front of it. We do that at the beginning to make it sort of simpler to understand, but really whenever you see a lowercase letter in geometry, you're talking about a line. Okay, it's just that's something you're gonna have to get used to. So a couple ways to name line Q would be any 2 points on the line. We could say a JK. Just kidding, I won't say that. I would say that. We could say KL, and these should be lines. And there's more, so let's put an asterisk by that one because there's multiple ways to say the same line. Okay, there's only one way to say the intersection of line P and line R. Line P and line R, so line P is the green one, line R is the purple one, and they intersect at point N, right here. They intersect at N. So that's the only way to really say it. You could put the word point in front of N, but we don't need to do that. Okay, next example. So let's look at the diagram here to the right. And this one has a line that's in the plane. So the way that you have to understand this notation is that there's a plane called plane M. There's the cursive letter over here. Here's the M. Okay, so that's plane M. And it's got one line that's in it. So line J is inside of plane M. And you could also call that line J by DE or DF. Okay, but that line that has nothing on the outside, that's in the plane. The entire line goes forever, and so does the plane. So it's in the plane. Okay, and then there's another line, which is line K, that goes through the plane and only intersects it at one point, and that's point E. Okay, so let's talk about some of these questions here. So a line containing point F. A line containing point F would be, and I'm just going to again emphasize this because we are still at the beginning with the word line, but you really just need to say K. K is the one, sorry, J. J is the line that contains point F over here. Okay, another name for line K, well, we could just name it with a couple of points on it. So BE would be a good way to do it. BE with the line notation over it. And then there's others. So there's other ways to name that, and there's actually other ways to name line J also. So you could have put line DF, for example. Okay, a plane containing A. There's only one plane containing A, and if you're okay with the cursive, you do something like a fancy M and you're good. Okay, if you don't want to do that because you're just not comfortable enough with cursive, you choose any 3 points that are non-collinear. So we could say plane, let's see, A, D, and E are not collinear. So plane A, D, and E. And by the way, when you're looking at 3 points and you're looking to make sure they're non-collinear, you're looking to see a triangle. So ADE makes a triangle. You don't want to say DEF because they make a line. Okay, so there's different ways to name that plane. All right, an example of 3 non-collinear points. So how about the same ones that I just mentioned, since that's how I named the plane? A, D, and E. Could have said A, F, and E. That would have worked too. That's another triangle. So I'm going to say yes, there's multiple ways. I changed my asterisk to a star. So let me just fix that so there's no confusion later. These are all supposed to be asterisks. All right, the intersection of the plane M, that's the plane that's pictured, and line K. They intersect at the one point right here where the line crosses through the plane, and that is point E. Again, you can put the word point, you don't have to. Okay, so we're going to do a part 2 that's going to be a short continuation with the last 2 examples, but I hope you found this video helpful.